Former High Court Judge Dyson Heydon now heads the Royal Commission into union corruption. It's exposed so much law-breaking that 26 union officials, past and present, have been arrested or recommended for charges. Heydon was also investigating dodgy deals Labor leader Bill Shorten made as a union boss, one which had an employer secretly give him $40,000. Former ACTU boss Martin Ferguson, a Gillard government minister, this week defended Heydon's work.
I don't see the Royal Commission as a political plaything. I actually think it's potentially going to be very important in reforming the trade union movement and the Labor Party, and I will not damn it.
But Bill Shorten says Heydon must quit or be sacked for a perception of bias for initially accepting an invitation from Liberal lawyers to give a law lecture.
Mr Abbott's put his captain's pick in an invidious position. I think Mr Abbott should have acted before now.
Heydon will announce his decision, whether he stays or goes, tomorrow. Joining me are Bruce Hawke, former Labor campaign strategist, and Janet Albrechtsen, columnist with The Australian. Bruce, Martin Ferguson defended the Royal Commission, Bill Shorten attacks it. Why is Labor running a protection racket for corrupt union officials?
Well, I challenge that premise, but what I do think is that this is very much a problem of Dyson Heydon's making. He's the one who put himself in this position. He's the one who's created the controversy, and he's the one who's created further doubt about when he knew what was being asked by journalists, and that is going to be the subject of further discussion or his ruling on Monday. So, sure, there are really serious issues to be analysed in the Royal Commission, but the way in which they've gone about it, in fact, probably the way in which they selected him rather than somebody who was much more unassociated with the Conservative side of politics, would have saved a lot of the problems that the government's got now.
Bruce, this association that Dyson Heydon is supposed to have with Liberal politics, name one association, formal associations, ever had.
He has no association with the Liberal side of politics. I mean, this is a complete stitch-up by the Labor Party, all right? It came out of a phone call from Mark Dreyfus's former staffer, and then Labor have confected this whirlwind of controversy. And you know, you couldn't be more wrong, Bruce, because what Labor are trying to do and what the unions are trying to do is set up a campaign that brings down a Royal Commissioner, a Royal Commission, and if Dyson Heydon, you know, finds that he has to step down, what a precedent that sets in this country. But let me come back to something. Let me come back to something. Let me finish. Let me come back to something that Martin Ferguson said this week. He described the Labor Party as prisoners of the union movement. Now, I think he's wrong, because I think even prisoners get to exercise in the yard. What they are, they're like hand puppets. When you have, you know, Bill Shorten and you have Brendan O'Connor and the various ministers up there, that is the union saying, oh, we think Dyson Heydon should stand down. We want the Royal Commission shut down.
Right, well,
this is a political...
That would all be fine, and it'd hold up were it not for the fact that he accepted an invitation to attend... Subsequently declined. An invitation to attend a Liberal Party fundraising event.
So
that's the problem. You can talk all you like, you can try to obfuscate as much as you like.
I think it's a disgraceful attack by Labor and the unions.
He's put himself into this position. He's put himself into this position.
He has never accepted an invitation to attend a Liberal fundraiser. He denies it, and I'm disappointed you repeat
it was a Liberal Party event, and it was being used to raise money. That was agreed by accepted by the Liberal Party director in New South Wales.
It's actually not true. But listen, Bruce, I'm surprised that you're siding with Bill Shorten against the Martin Ferguson thing here, because you worked for Kevin Rudd, and Kevin Rudd agreed that the unions had far too much control over Labor. And here is Labor running a protection racket for corrupt union officials, siding there because it's got a congruity of interest that Bill Shorten's also in there.
No, well, I wasn't trying to say that at all. What I was saying was that if the government really wanted to get to the bottom of a lot of these problems, they wouldn't have put themselves in the position where they put Dyson Heydon into that role, and now he's going to have to actually rule on whether he continues in that role himself. The best thing that could happen for this inquiry to continue I think, would be for him to withdraw, for a new commissioner to be put in, and for them to continue their investigations.
Okay.
I'm not here to condone any of those things to do with the union movement and rorting that was going on. I think it goes to the heart of a lot of problems that exist inside the Labor Party.
It's a protection racket, and it is absolutely disgusting and scary that Labor is part of it. But listen, another former ACTU president and Labor giant, the former Prime Minister Bob Hawke, also attacked Labor on another issue where it got too close to the unions. Bill Shorten is attacking the free trade deal with China. But Bob Hawke says that's wrong. Labor must not go backwards on this, and he says opposing the trade deal is absolutely against Australia's best interests. Once again, who's right, Bill Shorten or Bob Hawke?
Well, I don't think Shorten's saying he opposes the free trade agreement. What they're saying is they want to make sure that there are guarantees put in there that Australian jobs won't be put at risk, which I think is fair and reasonable. I think we'd all accept that. And that when people do come and work in this country from China, that they're paid at the right rates. There's nothing wrong with that. And your viewers would all accept that that's got to be done.
Yeah, but this is the thing. You're implying, as the unions and Labor deceitfully are, that there is some threat to the conditions. Do you understand that?
This is nonsense again, Bruce. This is nonsense. I mean, these are emotional claims. Again, you've got Bill Shorten, you know, with the unions right up him saying that this is putting Australian jobs at harm. It is not. I mean, these are the same provisions that existed when Labor, you know, put up some free trade agreements, right? There are guarantees there about conditions and about protecting Australian workers and doing testing. Right. I mean, this is complete misinformation.
Market testing is critically important, but there's nothing wrong with asking for that to happen.
It's the power of the unions driving.
It's already in there. It's already in the deal. This is a scandal about nothing. It's actually, I was going to say, use a rude word. But anyway, the Australian Border Force this week put out a press release suggesting it could stop people in the streets of Melbourne to ask whether they had a visa. The ABF chief said the wording was clumsy, the operation was stopped, the ABF was never going to stop people and ask for the papers. I mean, what do you think? That they were only going to be on hand at a Victorian police operation that was going to deal with antisocial behaviour, and if the police came across people who were working illegally, whatever, go and see the ABF guy here. Here is Tony Abbott yesterday.
We will never be in the business of stopping people randomly in the street to check on their visa details. That's just not the sort of thing that would ever happen in this country. Unfortunately, the press release was very, very badly worded.
No, but the thing is, it's led to the most amazing, over-the-top, incredible reaction from Bill Shorten. He doesn't want to live in a police state. Clive Palmer said this looked like Nazi Germany. Here's independent Andrew Wilkie, no better.
This is something that Joseph Stalin would be proud of.
Guys, are these people nuts?
It's a sad state of politics in Australia, isn't it, when you've got this kind of, again, it's confected outrage over nothing, over a poorly worded press release. We don't, who seriously thinks we live in a police state in Australia? You know, Joseph Stalin, Tony Abbott sitting at home with his Joseph Stalin costume on, this is absolute nonsense that I think just shows up the poor side of, you know, the left side of politics in Australia. If they have to confect stuff like this over nothing, and they do it again and again.
Can Australians actually be fooled by this stuff, Bruce? I mean, I wonder whether this is part of a confected outrage, as Janet says. Peter Harcher of the Sydney Morning Herald, for example, right? He's the guy that once falsely accused Abbott of having a homophobic moment. Claimed Abbott himself ordered this raid as part of his campaign to frighten Australians, although when you actually we have a look at the correction, the paper had some print on it today. He later had to admit the whole premise of the article was false and Abbott knew nothing about the raid. This is one great stitch-up by the media and the left.
Well, once again, though, Andrew, it's something that's been created by some numbskull in this Border Defence Force. You know, if they hadn't have gone around saying that they were going to be checking on people's visas when they were wandering around the streets of Melbourne, we wouldn't be having this discussion now.
You know what funny that?
There wouldn't have been a platform for some far-left group to go and protest on the streets of Melbourne.
What I think funny, Bruce, is this. Yeah,
I mean,
it was badly worded. But what I think is funny, here we have Bill Shorten at the same time saying, booga booga, the Chinese are going to come and get your jobs, and then is still deploring an operation to stop illegal immigrants. He wants to have it both ways. More from the panel coming up. Is the government really in that much trouble after this? The government is going terribly if you believe this week's news poll, or not that badly if you believe the Essential poll. Either way, the government really needed to sell its main message, particularly the economy, and especially in a week where the share market went haywire and investors were freaking. But the Prime Minister was in the Torres Strait, selling himself as a friend of Aborigines, while Treasurer Joe Hawke this week signed up to help his mate Peter Fitzsimons sell the Republic. Another distraction Tony Abbott really didn't need.
Federal Treasurer Joe Hawke, who I'm pleased to reveal today, will be the co-convener of a new parliamentary friendship group for an Australian head of state.
No, we didn't talk about this because we've got, I suppose, bigger things on our minds most of the time.
I'm back with Bruce Hawker and Janet Albrechtsen. Janet, initially I thought Joe Hawke signing up for a parliamentary group to push the Republic, terrible optics, bad look. But then I thought, did I get sucked in by media beat-up?
I think it's a complete beat-up. I mean, there are more friendship groups than there are letters in the alphabet. You know, you can start with Friends of Arthritis through to Friends of the War Memorial. There are lots of friendship groups. I think it's a good thing that we have parliamentarians join up to these various groups. We know what Joe Hawke's views on the Republic are. It's not a big deal. You know, he's the Treasurer. He's focusing on tax reform this week, on you know, trying to get the message out about bracket creep. Let's see if he can do something there. That's the critical issue, not whether he is a member of a friendship group.
And yet another day lost.
It's another example of an own goal, which you discussed in the first segment. You know, Joe Hawke didn't have to sign up to be part of that group. He did. Draws attention to himself, raises questions about what his motivations are, brings Malcolm Turnbull into the focus again. You know, they've got themselves to blame, Andrew, for this, for Dyson Heydon, for all these other issues. You go to the heart of these problems and they are initiated by people inside the government who aren't managing the agenda at all well.
Well, it's people inside the government who may be enemies of Joe Hawke, perhaps. But it's interesting, though, because two annual reports in the past fortnight suggest the government's economic strategy is fundamentally actually not bad. First, Qantas announced profits of $500,000 just 2 years after asking the government for a $4 billion loan. It was in so much trouble. Abbott and Hawke said no, Labor wanted a yes. Who was right?
Well, clearly the government was right. I mean, I think it's another reminder of Labor's regression on these economic issues. You know, I think it was only a year ago that Qantas was facing a $2.8 billion loss. Look how they've turned that around, and what has caused them to turn it around without a single dollar from taxpayers. They've gone in and made the company more efficient to the point where they're now returning money to shareholders. They're buying new planes, 787s. This is what companies do when they are not, you know, cosseted by taxpayer money.
And I've got to say, and a very low price for fuel.
No, I know
We've got to be very careful about
Bruce,
saying victory in our time. Let's wait and see how things go over the next few years before we start saying that everything's going well.
But Labor would have shuffled out a handful of taxpayers' cash. The other result, Blackmores, that I thought, you know, was interesting. Maker of vitamins saw its net profit up more than 80% thanks to huge sales to China. Now, doesn't this, Bruce, suggest the government's free trade deal with China, which Labor is now attacking, is actually crucial to our future? This wasn't obviously a direct result of that, but it shows the potential for selling our services and other products to China.
There's no doubt that a free trade agreement with China is a good thing. And as I said earlier, you just have to make sure that the proper safeguards are in place. It's an argument which is long gone, really. I mean, we do need to have a good, robust relationship with our biggest trading partner.
Yeah, but what is China supposed to make of this vehemently anti-Chinese protest run by Labor? That's what scares me.
Well, but you know, they've had to worry about all sorts of things with, you know, Tony Abbott going off and sucking up to the Japanese when it's upset the Chinese.
Labor
They're big people. They can deal with these things.
Very dirty waters.
They play a long game. They play a long game.
Yes,
the
a
Chinese.
long racist game in here. No. But anyway, meanwhile, ties between Tony Abbott. You've got to look at this. Ties between Tony Abbott and Social Services Minister Scot Morrison seem much stronger these days. I do think they've reached some kind of understanding that, you know, Morrison is Abbott's natural successor, which is interesting, Janet, because that suggests that he won't be on what was mooted earlier this year, a sort of joint ticket with Malcolm Turnbull to replace Tony Abbott.
He is the natural successor. When you look at the runs on the board, and there aren't too many people, I think, in the Abbott government who have scored, you know, good runs on the board. It's been Morrison. It's been Morrison on border protection. You know, he's got this great sort of combination of courage on reform and humility in taking it to the people and explaining what reform means and being articulate in doing so. He's the natural successor to Tony Abbott.
And I think this realignment has made his position stronger.
But not the people's choice. Not the people's choice. All the polls say it's Malcolm Turnbull. You may not like that. That's reality. And I don't think you'll see Tony picking the fleece off Malcolm Turnbull the way he did off Scot Morrison.
You were singing a different story when all the polls suggested that Kevin Rudd should be replacing Julia Gillard.
Sorry, I don't understand.
On the show.
Yep. Yes. Well, he is the people. He was the people's choice, as is Morrison. As is Turnbull, not Morrison.
Meanwhile, next month's Canning by-election could finish Abbott, and as you said last time, if the Liberals lose. But although the stakes are high, the Australian Electoral Commission's technology is low. Have a look at this. It hired a blindfolded woman to draw the names of the candidates out of a barrel to decide the order in which they'll be listed on the ballot paper. It's quite charming, actually, very Australian. Could Labor win? Oh, look, there you go. And there's the candidate's name on the whiteboard up there.
And who was number one, by the way?
Clive Palmer, I think.
Yes,
Clive Palmer's candidate.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's what happens with blind justice.
Oh, look, it's wonderful. But more seriously, the ABC this week has screened a tweet, Janet, during Q&A saying Tony Abbott loved anal sex. Now, accident, on purpose, who knows? I'll discuss it later with Gerard Henderson, but you were on the board of the ABC. Have you ever known the ABC to be as actually aggressively hostile to Conservatives and the Liberals particularly as it is now?
No, I haven't. I think under Mark Scott it's actually gone backwards in the way that it presents, in its very definition of what it thinks the Australian community is. I mean, does the ABC really think that this kind of stuff that they run on the ticket line of the screen on Q&A is interesting to the broader Australian community? It's, the people who find it fascinating, of course, are the sort of the Twitter crowd, right? That is not the Australian community. That is not what the ABC is there for. The ABC needs to just go back and look at what the Charter says about what it's meant to do.
That's the whole point.
And the problem, Andrew, is that there is no accountability. Whenever someone makes a mistake, I actually don't think it's a mistake. I think this kind of stuff is deliberate. They've got a team of people working on these programs. I mean, like this is a tightly run ship here. You should see the Q&A program, right? So the notion that it's a mistake.
Maybe the ABC should look to the Bolt report for even-handedness in the way in which it covers Australian politics.
There you are. And you are sitting right there.
Yes.
Kevin Rudd this week, Bruce, your former boss, colleague, whatever, this week guest hosted on CNN, the left's version of Fox News, although much less successful. Have a listen.
Then there's Australia, where England just edged us out of the Ashes this year. For the uninitiated, that's a cricketing trophy. Well, OK, we were semi-thumped. Well, OK, thumped good and proper.
Right, OK. What's he up to, Rudd? Advertising himself as the next Secretary-General of the UN on the station that those UN diplomats all watch?
I'm not reading anything into that other than a bit of fun on his part. I'm not, certainly when it comes down to cricketing analogies.
Fun on his part. I'm not sure if it was fun on the audience.
I don't know that people were rolling in the aisles.
No.
His attempt at comedy.
Bruce Hawker, Janet Albrechtsen, thank you so much for your time. Coming up, the ABC does it again. It's obscene smearing of the Prime Minister after this.